When did someone's jealousy completely ruin your life? I never thought someone's jealousy could completely dismantle my life until it happened to me. One day I was living my dream, running my own design agency, coming home to someone I loved, respected in my field, and the next I was watching it all crumble because one person couldn't stand seeing me succeed. If you've ever had someone try to sabotage your success, you'll want to stay until the end of this story. Trust me, the warning signs I missed might save you from the same fate. My name is Daniel, and 5 years ago, I was exactly where I wanted to be. After graduating with a design degree and spending 3 years working for others, I'd finally built my own boutique graphic design agency. We weren't huge, just me and 4 talented designers I'd handpicked, but we were making waves in the industry. Our client list was growing, our work was being featured in design publications, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I'd truly made it. Home wasn't any different. I shared a comfortable apartment with Morgan, my partner of 6 years. We'd met during my struggling freelancer days when I could barely afford ramen. Morgan believed in me when nobody else did, worked extra shifts to keep us afloat while I chased my dream. We had plans: marriage, maybe kids someday, a house with a dedicated studio space where I could work when inspiration struck at odd hours. I remember sitting on our balcony one evening, watching the sunset with a glass of wine, thinking how perfectly everything had fallen into place. That's the thing about perfect moments. They're fragile, temporary. I just didn't know it yet. If someone had told me then that a person I hadn't thought about in years would systematically destroy everything I'd built, I would have laughed. I've never been the type to make enemies. I work hard, treat people with respect, mind my own business. But that's the insidious thing about jealousy. It doesn't require you to do anything wrong. Sometimes, your only crime is succeeding where someone else failed. I didn't recognize the threat when it walked through our office door with a familiar face and a firm handshake. I actually smiled, offered a genuine welcome, even felt a twinge of nostalgia seeing Jared again after all these years. We'd been classmates, competitors in college, but never enemies, at least not from my perspective. How could I have known that behind his congratulatory words and seemingly friendly reminiscing lurked years of festering resentment? "Daniel, it's been too long," he'd said, surveying the office I'd designed myself with appreciative eyes. "You've done well for yourself." I remember feeling a flicker of pride at his acknowledgement. Funny how validation from peers can mean so much, even when you think you've outgrown the need for it. "Thanks, man. It's good to see you. Welcome to the team." That handshake was the beginning of the end, though I wouldn't connect the dots until it was too late. By then, the damage would be irreversible, the betrayal complete, and my life as I knew it would be shattered beyond recognition. This is the story of how one person's jealousy didn't just disrupt my career, it invaded every aspect of my existence until I barely recognized myself or the life I'd built. I met Jared during our sophomore year at design school. We were both enrolled in an advanced typography course, the kind that separates the casually interested from those who live and breathe design. Professor Winters was notorious for his brutal critiques and impossible standards. During our first major project presentation, he tore apart everyone's work. Except for 2 students, Jared and me. "These 2 understand that design isn't decoration, it's communication," Winters had announced to the class, holding up our projects side by side. That moment created an unspoken connection between us. We weren't exactly friends, more like mutual challengers who pushed each other to excel. When I'd stay late perfecting a project, I'd often find Jared there too, hunched over his work with intense concentration. We'd nod in acknowledgement, sometimes exchange feedback, occasionally grab coffee during all-nighters. There was respect there, but also constant comparison. The difference between us was clear, though. Jared came from money. His father owned a successful advertising agency, where he was guaranteed a position after graduation. His equipment was top of the line, his apartment spacious and modern. Meanwhile, I was working part-time jobs between classes, using outdated software on a second-hand laptop, and living in a cramped studio apartment with unreliable heating. Despite these differences, we were neck and neck academically. Sometimes he'd win the highest marks, sometimes I would. When graduation came, we both received honors, though he edged me out for the department's top award by a fraction of a point. "Congratulations," I told him sincerely at the ceremony, extending my hand. He'd smiled, but something flickered behind his eyes. Something I couldn't identify then, but now recognize as resentment. "Thanks. Good luck out there, Daniel." After graduation, our paths diverged dramatically. Jared went straight into his father's agency as expected, starting in a junior creative director position that most designers work a decade to achieve. I took a job at a small firm, working 60-hour weeks for minimal pay, learning everything I could about both design and business. 3 years later, when I left to start my own agency, I heard through mutual connections that Jared had been demoted at his father's company after a series of client complaints and missed deadlines. I felt bad for him, but was too consumed with my own struggles to give it much thought. Those first years on my own were brutal. I worked from my apartment, took any client who would pay me, and often wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Morgan was my rock through it all, believing in me when I stopped believing in myself, celebrating tiny victories, and never once suggesting I give up and find stable employment. The turning point came when I landed a rebranding project for a local restaurant chain. My design caught the attention of a food industry magazine, which led to more restaurant clients, which established me as something of a specialist. I hired my first employee, then my second. We moved into a small office space, then a larger one as our reputation grew. By the time I was 30, my agency had become known for clean, innovative design work that actually drove business results. We weren't just making things look pretty, we were helping companies communicate their value and connect with customers. The satisfaction of building something from nothing, of creating opportunities not just for myself but for my team, was indescribable. Home life was equally rewarding. Morgan and I had moved into a beautiful apartment with enough space for both of us to pursue our passions. We traveled when we could, hosted dinner parties for friends, and talked about the future with excitement rather than anxiety. For the first time in my life, I felt financially secure and professionally fulfilled. I occasionally thought about my former classmates, wondering where they'd ended up. I'd heard bits and pieces about Jared, that he'd left his father's agency, bounced between a few positions, never quite finding his footing. I felt a twinge of sympathy, but nothing more. Success had given me the luxury of not dwelling on old rivalries or comparisons. That's the irony of what happened next. I had moved so far beyond our college competition that when Jared re-entered my life, I didn't perceive him as a threat. I had no reason to. I was secure in my achievements, confident in my abilities, and completely unprepared for someone whose resentment had been silently growing for years while my life flourished. I had no idea that my success, built through countless sleepless nights, financial gambles, and genuine passion for my craft, had become the focal point of his bitterness. Or that he'd been watching my rise from afar, each of my achievements another twist of the knife in his wounded ego. The email from our biggest client, Meridian Hospitality Group, arrived on a Monday morning. They were bringing in a new marketing director who wanted to meet the team handling their account. Standard procedure, nothing alarming. What wasn't standard was the name at the bottom of the email, Jared Westfield. I stared at my screen, coffee halfway to my lips. Jared would be overseeing our work? The coincidence seemed too perfect, or too terrible, to be real. I immediately called my contact at Meridian. Yes, he specifically requested to work with your agency, she confirmed. Said he was familiar with your work. Isn't that great? Already a fan. When I hung up, I tried to rationalize my unease. It had been years. People change, mature. Maybe this was actually positive, working with someone who understood my design philosophy from our shared education. Besides, Meridian represented nearly 30% of our annual revenue. I couldn't exactly refuse. The following week, Jared walked into our conference room looking every bit the successful executive. Tailored suit, confident stride, firm handshake. If I hadn't known him before, I would have been impressed. Daniel, he said warmly, your reputation precedes you. The design wunderkind who built an agency from scratch. Hardly a wunderkind anymore, I laughed, gesturing to the slight gray at my temples. But it's good to see you, Jared. Welcome to our humble operation. As I introduced him to my team, I noticed how he assessed everything, the office layout, our portfolio displayed on the walls, the easy rapport among my staff. His smile never wavered, but his eyes were calculating. You've done well for yourself, he said during our catch-up lunch afterward. Very well. It's been a journey, I replied. What about you? Last I heard you were at your father's agency. Something hardened in his expression before he smoothly transitioned to a practiced laugh. Ancient history. Dad and I had creative differences. I've been climbing the corporate ladder my own way since then. Have you ever had that gut feeling about someone but ignored it? Let me know in the comments because what happened next might have been avoided if I'd trusted my instincts. The first few weeks of our renewed acquaintance were uneventful. Jared was professional, even complimentary of our work. But small things began to nag at me. Meeting times changed last minute. Feedback came late, forcing rushed revisions. Requirements shifted after work was completed. Just the nature of the business, my project manager said when I mentioned it. All clients do this. But Meridian hadn't operated this way before Jared's arrival. Then came the first major incident. We'd pitched a complete rebrand for Meridian's boutique hotel line, a project that could elevate our agency to national recognition. The presentation had gone brilliantly. Even Jared seemed impressed. 2 days later, he called. Daniel, I have to be straight with you. The executive team wasn't blown away by the concept. My stomach dropped. That's surprising. The room seemed enthusiastic. Surface politeness, he sighed. Look, I fought for you, but they're considering other agencies. I might be able to salvage the relationship if you're willing to start from scratch. We worked through the weekend on a new concept. My team was exhausted but committed. When we submitted the revised proposal, Jared's response was lukewarm. I'll present it. but manage your expectations. A week later, I bumped into Meridian's CEO at an industry event. I braced myself for an awkward conversation about our disappointing work. "Daniel, just the man I wanted to see," he boomed. "That initial hotel concept was brilliant. Exactly what we needed." I froze. "Initial concept, not the revision?" He looked confused. "What revision?" "Jared presented your original work. The board approved it unanimously last week. Didn't he tell you?" The realization hit me like a physical blow. Jared had lied. He'd made us doubt ourselves, waste resources, and create a redundant proposal, all while taking our original work forward as if nothing had happened. When confronted, he was masterfully apologetic. "A miscommunication. I was traveling when the decision was made. Should have confirmed before having you do extra work." I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him, given Meridian's importance to our business. But the incident planted a seed of doubt I couldn't shake. More miscommunications followed. Our concepts would be presented incorrectly. Important emails would mysteriously end up in spam folders. Team members would receive conflicting instructions, creating confusion and delays. Gradually, my once cohesive team began showing signs of strain. Arguments erupted over misunderstandings. Two designers who had worked harmoniously for years now barely spoke. When I tried to address the tension, everyone had a different version of events, different instructions they claimed to have received, all somehow tracing back to communications with Jared. I began documenting everything, insisting on email trails, recording meetings when legal. Jared noticed, of course. "Trust issues, Daniel?" he asked during one call, his tone light, but with an undercurrent I couldn't quite identify. "I thought we were friends." "Just being thorough," I replied, matching his casual tone while my suspicion deepened. What I didn't realize then was that professional sabotage was just the beginning. Jared wasn't content to undermine my business. He wanted to dismantle my entire life. And he was just getting started. The situation with Jared deteriorated rapidly over the next few months. What began as miscommunications evolved into something more deliberate and damaging. I started noticing a pattern. Whenever we had a major presentation or deadline for Meridian, something would go wrong. Critical files would become corrupted. Team members would call in sick after food poisoning from catered lunches. Server outages would occur during crucial uploads. Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence. After the fifth unfortunate accident, I knew we were being systematically sabotaged. The most blatant incident came during our quarterly review with Meridian's executive team. We'd prepared an extensive presentation showcasing our results, metrics, engagement rates, conversion improvements. The data was impressive, irrefutable evidence of our value. 10 minutes before the meeting, Jared requested a private word. "I've been meaning to tell you," he said, voice lowered conspiratorially. "The board is concerned about your agency's performance. The numbers aren't where they should be." "What? That's impossible. We've exceeded every benchmark." He shrugged. "Just preparing you for some tough questions." When we entered the boardroom, I was tense, ready to defend our work. But the executives were smiling, relaxed. The CFO actually opened with, "Before you begin, I want to acknowledge the exceptional results your team has delivered this quarter." I glanced at Jared, who was studying his notes, face unreadable. Another mind game, another attempt to throw me off balance. After the meeting, which went brilliantly despite Jared's warning, I confronted him in the hallway. "What was that about? You said they were unhappy with our performance." "Did I?" He looked genuinely confused. "I think you misunderstood. I said they were impressed but wanted to understand the methodology better." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Daniel, are you feeling all right? You seem stressed." I pulled away. "I know exactly what you said." "Maybe you should take some time off," he suggested, concern in his eyes so convincing it made me momentarily doubt my own memory. Burnout is real in our industry. That night, I recounted the incident to Morgan, who had noticed my increasing preoccupation with work. "It sounds like he's gaslighting you," Morgan said. "Why would he do that?" I had no concrete answer then, just a growing certainty that Jared's presence in my professional life was no coincidence. But I couldn't prove anything, and voicing my suspicions made me sound paranoid. If you're finding this story relatable, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Sometimes the most important lessons come from our darkest moments. The sabotage extended beyond Meridian. Somehow, other clients began hearing rumors about our agency, that we were in financial trouble, that we were losing our creative edge, that I was difficult to work with. Small contracts were canceled. Potential clients who had been enthusiastic suddenly went cold. During this time, one of my senior designers, Alicia, requested a private meeting. She'd been with me almost from the beginning, a talented professional I trusted implicitly. "I don't know how to say this," she began, clearly uncomfortable. "But Jared approached me about joining Meridian's in-house team." My heart sank. "Are you considering it?" "No," she said firmly. "But that's not all. He implied that you were planning to downsize the agency. Said you'd confided in him about financial problems. That's completely false, I said, anger rising. We're financially stable despite the recent client losses. She nodded. I figured as much. But he's approached others too, sowing doubt, making offers. This was worse than I'd imagined. Jared wasn't just undermining our client relationships. He was attempting to poach my team, the people I'd mentored and grown with. I called an emergency staff meeting, addressed the rumors directly, and opened our books to show the agency's true financial position. While not as strong as months prior, we were far from the dire situation Jared had described. If anyone has concerns, my door is always open, I told them. And if anyone has been approached with other offers, there's no judgment. But I'd appreciate knowing what's being said. Several team members came forward afterward. Each had a similar story. Jared had reached out, expressed admiration for their work, suggested the agency was failing, and offered a lifeline. 2 admitted they'd been seriously considering his offers. I was furious, but tried to channel that energy productively. I increased communication with the team, implemented new security protocols for our servers, and created redundancies for important files. I also began quietly documenting every suspicious incident, building a case. What I couldn't control was the toll this was taking on me personally. I became hypervigilant, checking and rechecking everything, sleeping poorly, bringing work stress home. Morgan was patient but increasingly concerned. You're not the same person lately, Morgan said one night after I'd spent hours reviewing contracts for language that could be exploited. You're suspicious of everyone, working all hours, always on edge. You don't understand what I'm dealing with, I snapped, immediately regretting my tone. Then help me understand, Morgan pleaded, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're becoming obsessed with Jared. He's living rent-free in your head. The truth in those words stung. Jared was winning by making me doubt myself, my team, my relationships, by forcing me to divert energy to defense rather than creation, by slowly transforming me into someone I didn't recognize. The breaking point came when we lost the pitch for a major national brand, one that would have secured our financial future regardless of what happened with Meridian. We'd been the frontrunners, our concept testing off the charts with focus groups. Then, mysteriously, the client went with a larger agency despite their inferior proposal. Through industry contacts, I learned that someone had sent the client a dossier of concerns about our agency, fabricated client complaints, manipulated financial data suggesting instability, even personal information about me that painted me as unreliable. I didn't need to ask who was behind it. The methodical destruction of everything I'd built had Jared's fingerprints all over it, but proving it was another matter entirely. He operated through intermediaries, careful never to leave evidence that could be traced directly back to him. As my professional world constricted, I had no idea that Jared was already implementing the next phase of his plan, one that would target the foundation of my personal life and leave me truly alone. The first sign that Jared's vendetta had crossed into my personal life came in the form of a text from Morgan. We need to talk when you get home. The message itself wasn't unusual, but something in my gut tightened. I'd been feeling that a lot lately, a constant sense of impending disaster. When I arrived home, Morgan was sitting at our dining table, expression unreadable, a glass of untouched wine nearby. Someone sent me these today, Morgan said, sliding a phone across the table. I think you should explain. On the screen were screenshots of what appeared to be dating app conversations, with my photo, my name, explicit messages to multiple women, arrangements to meet. The timestamps showed activity during times I'd been working late, or claimed to be. This isn't me, I said immediately, feeling sick. Morgan, you know this isn't me. Do I? Because lately, I don't know who you are anymore. You're distant, secretive, always working, always stressed. And now this. It's fake. Someone set this up. Even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. Paranoid, desperate, exactly like someone caught in a lie. Who would do that, Daniel? Who would go to such lengths? Jared, I said without hesitation. This is exactly his pattern. Undermining trust, creating doubt, using just enough truth to make the lies believable. Morgan's expression softened slightly, but doubt remained. I want to believe you. But this is elaborate. The conversations go back weeks. I spent hours that night trying to prove my innocence, showing Morgan my actual phone, my actual accounts, the impossibility of being in those conversations when I was demonstrably elsewhere. The fake profile was reported and removed, but the damage was done. A seed of doubt had been planted in my relationship, just as it had been with my team, my clients. The next attack came through our social circle. Friends began treating me differently, canceled plans, unanswered messages, awkward encounters when we did meet. Eventually, one of them, Alex, pulled me aside at a gathering. Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but people are talking. Someone's been sharing stories about you, that you're having financial problems, that you're abusing prescription medication, that you've been making inappropriate comments about women we know. None of that is true, I said, feeling the ground shift beneath me again. Who's saying these things? Different sources, but it often traces back to conversations with that marketing guy you work with, Jared. He seems concerned about you, actually. Says you've been erratic, making bad decisions. The realization that Jared had infiltrated my social circle hit me like a physical blow. He'd positioned himself as the concerned colleague while systematically poisoning my relationships. And because the rumors came through multiple channels, denying them only made me appear defensive. Morgan and I were struggling. Despite wanting to believe me, the constant drip of evidence was taking its toll. We argued more frequently, often about my paranoia regarding Jared. Even if he is behind some of this, Morgan said during one particularly heated exchange, your obsession with him is destroying us faster than he ever could. There was truth in that. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, suspicious, angry, isolated. I'd stopped creating, stopped enjoying anything. My entire existence had narrowed to defending against the next attack. The final blow to my personal life came when Morgan received an email from an anonymous account. It contained financial records showing that my agency was nearly bankrupt, that I'd been hiding our financial reality, even suggesting I'd engaged in questionable accounting practices. Mixed with these fabrications were enough actual details about our business to make the whole thing believable. Were you ever going to tell me? Morgan asked, voice breaking. We've been talking about buying a home, starting a family. Were you just pretending everything was fine? These records are manipulated, I insisted, recognizing Jared's handiwork immediately. The documents contained information only someone with access to our Meridian account would know. The agency has challenges, yes, but nothing like what this shows. But my credibility was shot. Too many coincidences, too many explanations required. Morgan needed space to think, decided to stay with a friend temporarily. The temporary separation became permanent when, a week later, Morgan called to say someone had come forward claiming to have had an affair with me, with details about our home, our relationship, my habits, that only someone close to us would know. I can't do this anymore, Morgan said, voice distant. I don't know what's true and what isn't, and I can't live with this constant doubt. I was devastated but also consumed with a cold fury. Jared had systematically dismantled my life. My business was struggling, my reputation in tatters, my relationship destroyed. He'd executed a campaign of destruction so thorough, so patient, that I couldn't defend against it. The next day, I did something I should have done months earlier. I confronted him directly, walking into his office unannounced, past his protesting assistant. Why? I demanded, my voice surprisingly calm given the rage inside me. What did I ever do to deserve this? Jared leaned back in his chair, and for the first time dropped the mask of friendly concern. His smile was cold, satisfied. You really don't know, do you? He said. You never even realized what you took from me. What I took from you? I repeated, genuinely confused. We were classmates, competitors maybe, but I never took anything from you. Jared's laugh was hollow. Of course you didn't. Daniel the talented, Daniel the humble, Daniel who built everything from nothing. His voice dripped with contempt. Do you know what happened after you graduated with all those honors? My father expected the same from me. The same drive, the same talent, the same results. That's not my fault, I said. Your relationship with your father. My father compared me to you for years, he interrupted, voice rising. Even after giving me a position at his agency, he'd say, Daniel wouldn't have handled it this way, or, I hear Daniel's work is getting recognition. When I failed to live up to his expectations, he demoted me publicly, humiliated me in front of the entire company. I stood there, stunned by the revelation. All this destruction, all this calculated malice, because of a comparison I never asked for, never even knew about. So you decided to destroy my life? Because your father was unfair to you? I decided to show him, and you, that success isn't about talent. It's about power, manipulation, knowing how to break people. His expression was chilling in its satisfaction. And I did break you, didn't I? The great Daniel reduced to nothing. In that moment, looking at the pleasure he took in my pain, something shifted inside me. The fog of anxiety and paranoia that had clouded my thinking for months began to clear. I took out my phone, stopped the recording I'd been making, and placed it on his desk. Thank you for the confession, I said quietly. I needed that. His smug expression faltered. No one will believe you. Your credibility is shot. You're just a failing designer having a breakdown. Maybe, I acknowledged. But Meridian's legal team might be interested in how their marketing director deliberately sabotaged their contracted agency. The police might have questions about identity theft and fraud. And I think a lot of people would be fascinated by how thoroughly you documented your own criminal behavior. I placed a USB drive beside my phone. My team found some interesting files when we did a security audit of our systems. Keyloggers, spyware. You were good, but not as good as you thought. we recovered quite a collection of your activities. The color drained from his face. You're bluffing. Am I? I guess we'll find out. I turned to leave, then paused. You know what the difference is between us, Jared? I built things. You only know how to destroy. The aftermath wasn't immediate or dramatic. There was no cinematic moment where Jared was led away in handcuffs or where I triumphantly reclaimed everything I'd lost. Real life doesn't work that way. What did happen was a slow, painful process of rebuilding. With evidence of Jared's sabotage, Meridian terminated his contract and launched an internal investigation. Other affected clients were approached carefully, the situation explained. Some returned, some didn't. My team, those who had remained loyal despite everything, rallied around the agency. We downsized, refocused, started again with smaller projects and a renewed commitment to our craft. The financial recovery was gradual but steady. My personal life was harder to repair. Morgan and I tried counseling, but too much damage had been done, too much trust broken. We parted as friends, both carrying scars from what we'd endured. My social circle had fractured, with some friends returning with apologies while others remained distant, the rumors having taken permanent root. The legal consequences for Jared were significant, but not life-destroying. Probation, fines, a career in marketing effectively ended. His father, upon learning the full extent of his actions, cut ties completely. The last I heard, he'd moved to another state, started over in a different industry. As for me, I learned painful but valuable lessons about jealousy, about how someone's perception of you can have nothing to do with reality and everything to do with their own insecurities. I learned that success can make you a target, that not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. Most importantly, I learned about resilience, that even when someone systematically dismantles your life, you can build again. Different perhaps, scarred certainly, but possibly stronger for having been broken. This story took years of my life to unfold, but just seconds to share. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. And if you've ever experienced someone's toxic jealousy, share your story in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the first step in healing. Today, 5 years after Jared's campaign of destruction, my agency is thriving again, smaller but more selective, creating work I'm proud of. I'm more cautious now, more careful about who I trust, but I refuse to let one person's jealousy define my life or limit my success. Because ultimately, that would mean he won. And that's a victory I'll never give him.